Hello everyone. So I found this topic just absolutely fascinating in terms of like the major groups of the gear we need to buy as real estate photographers. What can we pin down as being the most important and what can we pin down as sort of being the least important? In other words, which gear choices that we have to make can literally almost be decided by like the flip of a coin or the roll of a die, and it wouldn't even matter. And then which choices are actually very important, going to affect our quality and sort of the quality of our ease of maneuvering around our jobs better. So here we go, and we're going to fill this in. And the first one is really like just sort of the crux of the entire blog here. And guess what? Camera body to me is probably the least important choice you're gonna make. You can really, honestly, you can just take a roll of dice and it doesn't matter. Canon, Nikon, Sony, it doesn't matter. You could pick Fuji. It's not gonna affect your image quality. It's not gonna affect your sort of cumbersomeness on site in any way. It's not going to make your life easier. See, the thing is, a lot of people, all these cameras have, good points and bad points. So one of them might be a little bit better for you in terms of maybe if you really need a flippy screen or whatever, something like that. And I'm not knocking any decision like that you're making, but the point here really is that, all the camera companies make a camera with a flippy screen, right? So the camera body, in my opinion, is really the least important choice we have as real estate photographers. We don't need good focusing. We're on a tripod. For us, it's just a camera. It's just a box with a sensor in it. That's all we care about is that sensor. So the quality of our sensor matters to some extent, but all we need is a decent sensor. If we're spending $500 or up on our camera and real estate photography, we're really going to be fine, and the final product really isn't going to be affected no matter which choice we make. So moving on, and we're going to sort of spend less and less time on these, but the drone, I would say, is really in the same vein, and it's kind of, you could consider it a camera too. And I do have an upcoming video I'm going to make today on this topic about drones and whether you should get one for real estate photography. Maybe you could answer their own question, but I feel like there's a half a dozen or so drones, made by DJI, and they're just great for real estate photography. I don't think the decision is too important because the reason is, as you're getting into this, you can pick, say, a DJI Mavic Air, right? That's a great drone. You're going to have the video is going to be good. And all you need to do after that is maybe after a year or two, you start to think, oh, I need something and this drone doesn't have it. Well, maybe the Mavic Air becomes your backup drone, and the new drone, whatever it happens to be, that becomes your main drone. So I just don't think it's something you should spend a lot of hours and hours and hours on the internet researching. I think that turns into a huge waste of time. I know I'm guilty of that, and I think we all are in sort of today's society, just spending hours and hours. I know when I go out on one of my jobs, this is not really meant to be bragging, but I can make $100 or $200 an hour. So if you think about we're spending 5, 10 more hours trying to figure out which drone to buy. Well, that's money right there. We could have been making money, right? Our time is worth a lot. So the point here is, these are choices at the bottom here that I really don't think are too important. I think, for example, any real estate photographer out there could just get a Mavic Air and it's fine. They don't even have to think about it, okay? It's just not that important. Moving on here to choice number 4, and this to me is where we're starting to get into more of an important area, because I feel like right now, this would probably change if you go back about 10 years, but right now there's a lighting system, they're sort of rebranded at Adorama, and I think if you're, trying to decide, should I go Pro Photo or should I go Flashpoint, the branded stuff from Adorama, I really think it's a clear decision. The light isn't, say, better if you buy Pro Photo flashes, right? So I do think we're starting to get into gear choices here that are sort of important. Like if you drop a Pro Photo, B1, you're going to be out a couple $1,000s, right? If you drop, some of these other lights that I recommend in my other videos, you see the point I'm getting at. It is an important choice, and yet if you spend more money, it's not going to affect your quality necessarily. So I do think the lighting and trigger is starting to get in there to an important choice. And let's move on though. So I think lenses also. So this is, and some of these up here could be swapped, like 3 could swap with 4. But anyway, I think lenses is a really important choice. I think in general, whatever camera body you end up going with, you know, crop or full frame, I usually recommend crop, but I think you should try and get the best, absolute best wide angle zoom lens, or you know, you could say ultra wide angle zoom lens. So on a crop sensor, that might be starting at about 11 millimeters or so. Just get the absolute best one there is. And in my opinion right now, for crop sensors, Tokena is making the best lenses. So the Tokena 11 to 20 would be a good example. And if you're shooting on full frame, something like the Tamron 15 to 30 or even the Sigma Art 14 to 24 would be great choices. Moving on here. So this, you know, we'll talk about this more in a couple slides from now, but it's so interesting, this stuff that made the top of my list. And I really tried to do this as objectively as I could. And I've said this before about tripods. I really feel like they're sort of under discussed, and you know, people think, oh, I have a tripod and that's good enough, right? You know, especially when you're just getting started. But the tripod for us, you know, I might take on any given day, you know, for me, like if I have a full schedule, like 90 or 100 photos, you know, 30 photos per house, maybe I'm doing 3 houses. Well, I just maneuvered that tripod. That's the thing I was handling. That's the thing I was moving up, moving down, adjusting the center column, you know, adjusting the legs. That's the thing I was with all day. That's the thing I was manipulating all day, okay? It would be maybe kind of like if you're at work, a 9 to 5, the guy that you have to work all day with in the same cubicle, like you want that to be like, you know, hopefully a good guy, right? And not annoying. So that's like your tripod. Your life is going to get so much easier the better the tripod you choose. And it's not necessarily the more you spend, but the tripod with the better features. And I have videos up about this where I want you to get 4-section tripods, for example, and I want you to get tripods with a long center column. And that way, it's a great sort of balance between, you know, you can do everything you need with them in terms of going high. Sometimes we need to get a little higher, but in terms of the 4-section, you're able to extend all one set of legs fully, and then it's at a really good height, like at about waist level, and then you can use that long center column, and you're really going to be able to get about 90% of your interior photos without even having to adjust the leg. So I really think like picking the right tripod is just almost one of the most important things in your gear in order of importance. So I know it's crazy, but the tripod. And so let's get to our number 1 choice here. And maybe people weren't thinking about this, but the computer, it's insane. Huh? I think the computer is absolutely the most important choice. And the one caveat I'll make here is that, you know, a lot of people sort of get into real estate photography and they already have a computer. And I do think that you probably should use that computer because that's a big cost. And, you know, you're just getting into things. You don't want to dump a bunch of money into a computer right away. But if you don't have a computer when you're getting in this would apply to you. Or if your computer is crapped out on you or whatever and you're upgrading computer, this applies to you too. Every single computation you do, right, when you're working with a faster computer, that could say double the time as opposed to a slower computer. So a slower computer might take double the time as a good, faster computer, right? So really think about what that means. Just think about, just for 1 minute, just think about that. That right there could make your images better, right? Let's say you're editing one night and your editing session goes 3 hours and you're just, at the end, you're just done. Well, maybe if you had a new computer, each one of those computations you did, those hundreds, thousands of computations, maybe it went twice as fast. Maybe you're done in that session in 2 hours instead of 3 hours, right? Or maybe 2 hours, 15 minutes, whatever, you get the point. But the point is, you're a lot fresher at the end of that session. But it's not only that, we're going back to that thing where, you know, you're starting to realize how important this is to figure out how much you make per hour, right? Because I think that number is really important. And I personally think it's more important to calculate how much you're worth. So like for me, I've sort of calculated this number out. So how much is an hour of my time worth? I think that's more important than the cost of doing business. You can argue with me all you want in the comment section, but once you have that number, you're able to use that. Like my time is worth, say somebody said my time is worth $200 an hour. So that means if a client wants me to go do something for him, like drop off his keys in the mailbox or something, you know, that might take 30 minutes. Well, you know, I can have a decent understanding of what that's going to cost me at that point to do that for him. Okay. So I think this is a really important number for everyone to calculate, just using it on a daily basis to make your decisions. Should I be spending 5 hours to research drones? You know, I think it's crazy, right? Just get a Mavic Air. It's so easy. Get a DJI Mavic or whatever, a Mavic Pro, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. And this list, I hope, helps you with that. So we're going to jump back here and we have the order over here on the left. And I just want you to keep in mind, of course, I hope this went without saying throughout this video, but if you're a wedding photographer, for example, this camera body might completely change. In fact, it could even jump up to the top, right? So that's a really important consideration. So don't overlook that point. But as you may have noticed, as I was alluding to through the video, is there a pattern we see here? Like if we looked at this list over on the left, do we see a pattern? And I absolutely see a pattern. I mean, I don't know if you guys are seeing it right away, but the least asked about stuff is at the top. And the most asked about stuff as far as people getting into the field is at the bottom. So it's like an exact inverse relationship. And I find that really interesting. And the reason I'm sort of laughing is I hope this video is useful to people. I mean, I really think they should sort of be almost like reversing their psyche. I mean, just forget about this stuff you're spending loads of time on. Realize your time is worth money. Maybe when the time comes, spend that extra $1,000 to get your computer for your business. It's going to be a really important choice. Spend that extra hour or two picking out a really nice tripod. Spend the money on it too, right? Maybe same for the lens. And I think it's simpler for the lighting. You know, the Flashpoint R2 stuff is really good nowadays. You got everything you need. Okay, so those are the points I have. There's a big pattern there. The camera body is at the bottom. I think that's such an interesting point because, of course, we see everyday people. What are they asking about? It's camera bodies, right?